Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 273. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest is Chase Twichell. She'll be here in about 5 minutes. But before we get, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all that we do because we love poetry. And I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell. Leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this later. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet. Tell those algorithms that you love us. That helps more people find poetry too, and poetry makes the world a better place. So you are doing your part if you share and click and whatever you can click. All right, so as we often do, or always do, we're going to start out with our Poets Respond poet. And we have a wonderful poem today. It was one of the big topics this week. And Stuart Watson is here, a first-time guest. Hey, Stuart, how you doing? Oh, hang on 1 second, Stu. I can't. Let's see. Oh, no, not the sound again. Hang on. I can't hear you, Stu. I think it might be. Are you here? Because you're not popping up on Zoom either. Is your, let's see. You're unmuted. Are you there, Stu? Let me see. Sorry, Chase, can you, are you here? Make sure it's not this end of it.
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. So Stu, it's, because I keep having trouble with my earphone, but it's not that. I think we might have just got you. Stu, are you there now?
How's that? Better?
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So it is tough when multiple problems overlap. So great to see you, Stu. It's good to have you on. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
And so this poem was about the fall of Assad in Syria. And so can you tell us how this poem came to be and what inspired it?
Well, as I do every day, I was reading the New York Times, and they had one of their video sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, a montage, and multiple video clips kind of strung together, and they were streaming across the screen. And one of the clips was of a group of men in Damascus running along the street carrying a severed, some sort of a massive heroic sculpture head made out of some metal that was, it wasn't so heavy that they couldn't carry it, but copper or bronze or something. But anyway, they were running along, and the thing was, it was hollow. You could see through the neck hole of this head, and they would be running for a bit, and then one or two of them would fall away. They'd get tired, I guess, and other people would join in and help keep this head up so that they could, I don't know where they were going with it. It was just a short clip, and then that was it. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that poetry can do is like show how absurd the world actually is. Like we kind of forget how like wild things are when we get habituated. We've seen those kind of scenes play out over the years, but then to see things fresh. I think Brendan Constantine in an interview with Rattle was talking about how he likes to approach poems as if he's like describing the world to an alien for the first time who never seen it. And so much poetry comes out of that feeling. And I think that's kind of what happens here, where you see the surrealness that you take for granted in this poem, Big Head, and then all that head stands for. So it's a really fascinating way to make that vivid and make that memorable. A scene that we see often, but has such significance to sort of see it with fresh eyes is what this poem does. So thanks for doing that. Do you want to go ahead and read it?
Yeah, just 1 second here. Sorry.
Okay.
This is the first time here, so give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Sure. Published. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Big Head. They carried the big head through the streets, detached from its neck and its body, but spilling all its evil everywhere they carried it. Puddles for the people to splash their happy feet, its jaw flopping open as they adjusted the angle of the big head and its weight, the tongue lolling out what tongues do, and then retracting between teeth stained brown by too much smoking or lack of scrubbing with Ajax like the bottom of the toilet bowl. People growing tired of putting up with the big head one more second and falling away, and new people joining the people working so hard to keep the big head up above their own heads, to keep it where other people could see what a truly big head it was, and how it was no longer attached to heart and lungs in any of the many cruelties that lived inside what it was.
Yeah, beautiful ending in that poem. It's really powerful stuff, Stu. Did you have a sense of where you were going with it as you were writing the poem, or was it sort of a surprise to you as it flowed out?
More of the latter, really. I mean, I wanted to do something with it, but as it often happens, and if I can get myself in the space of this sort of stream of consciousness delivery, I call it spewing, just getting the stuff out, and then go back and play with it and tweak the material. But this is this is a first draft, how it ended anyway. There was modifications in the middle of the poem, but that was anyway.
Yeah, well, very cool. Thanks so much for sharing that, Stu. It's really a memorable piece, and we'll think about it every time we see those kind of scenes play out, which they often do. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, so, and that was today's quote of the day. Yeah, that was Stuart Watson with today's poem, Big Head. So we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Chase Twichell. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Chase Twichell. Chase is the author of 8 books of poetry, most recently Things as It Is from Copper Canyon. After teaching many years, she left academia to found Ausable Press, a not-for-profit publisher of contemporary poetry, which was acquired by Copper Canyon in 2009. From 2013 to 16, she served as chair of the Kate and Kingsley Tufts Awards jury. A longtime student in the Mountains and Rivers Order at Zen Mountain Monastery in upstate New York, she was featured in our 2011 tribute to Buddhist poets. And here she is, Chase Twichell. Hey, Chase, it's great to see you again.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, it's been, I remember driving, I took you to, we had an interview with you in Alan's office, and then we drove together to Claremont. I think you had a reading there later that night.
Right.
And
I had forgotten that.
I remember you talking about wanting the color of, I think it was the mountains there on the side first in your house. Do you remember that at all? You're like, that is the perfect color. What do you think they call that shade? And I was wondering if you ever ended up using it. Yeah. Well, it is so cool to see you again. Do you want to start us out with a poem right away? Do you want to do
Sure.
Early in the book, Who Cooks for You is one of the poems.
But before I start, I want to say that Big Head is one of my favorite titles of all time.
Yeah, it does a lot of work. It definitely does that title.
Okay. This was written during the pandemic when I was very isolated in a wilderness area. Who cooks for you? One night we heard barred owls very close. Hoo-hoo, 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 hoo-hoo. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you? Local lore says bears can sound like that, but that's untrue. It is true that they have a wide range of vocalizations, but they don't hoot. People sometimes mistake their call for faraway dogs. I sang, hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo, and a bird answered me, territorial. We humans sat out on the porch, imagining his brown ring face, his decision to choose this place for his home and defend it. Barred owls stay their whole lives in one place. In this case, a last scrap of wilderness. They can live into their 20s. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you? Whoever translated that from owl into English missed it entirely. We hear them often here in the far northern night. They're not talking about cooking. When it gets dark, they try again to reach us, reasoning, rebuking, beseeching. Hoo-hoo, 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 hoo-hoo.
Yeah, and that's a great poem to start out with because nature plays such an important role in your poems. Growing up in the Adirondacks with all that nature around, and so what role does nature and in the place that you live play in your poetry?
It's major. I know that some people can live anywhere and make it work. I taught in Alabama for 3 years. I was not a happy camper there. The job was great, but the state of politics was disturbing to me. And one of my colleagues said to me one day, but you could live anywhere, right? And I said, no, wrong. I couldn't live anywhere. It's actually one of the most important considerations in my life. And I'm an herbophobe. I'm very anxious in cities. I'm happiest when I have trees around me. And I was lucky to grow up in one of the last wildernesses east of the Rockies, the Adirondack Park. And it's bedrock for me. Nature is bedrock. I can't do without it.
Mm-hmm. And so how has that changed over the years? You mentioned that, that being the last wild place. And I remember only going once up to that area to camp when I was a kid. I grew up in Western New York. And so it was a big trip up to the Thousand Islands area. Is that what they call it? Thousand Islands?
That's north of us.
Yeah, and then camping back on the way back. And it is the only place I've been that has been like the California area in the mountains that I lived in for a while too. So has that, you still go back there frequently?
I do. I live there half the year now. And it's been the great grief of my life to watch it go from pristine wilderness to a polluted place like everywhere else on Earth. I see the changes in the forest and the colors of the mountains and so forth. And it was something that took me a long time to get over. And I do feel that I still grieve for the Earth, but I'm over it in the sense that it's no longer a fresh grief. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the childhood and how you got into poetry. It's always such an interesting thing to explore. What was it that made you fall in love with writing poems? Is it something that you always thought you'd do, or was it something that took a while to come up?
Actually, I was obsessed with painting as a child when I was in grade school. We had a fantastic teacher who was a grad student at Yale, and our art teacher got sick, and so they pulled him in at the last minute. And he'd never seen, I was in the 5th grade. He didn't know 10-year-olds from gazelles. But he came in, and the first thing he did was move all the chairs and tables so that everybody was facing the wall, a big circle facing outward. And he used to rummage through the dumpsters at Yale at the end of every semester and grab all the canvases that art students had thrown away and all the oil paints. And he started us off by saying, okay, you have 1 hour to paint a painting. You have to paint it in 1 hour. You can't go longer. You can use any colors you want. And you have to use a canvas that somebody's already painted on. And you have to let something of the original painting come through, either texture or bits of color or whatever. It was fantastic. And I just went wild with that. And for 3 years, I did nothing but paint, including not doing my homework. And then I was sent off to boarding school when I was 14. And because my parents were afraid I was getting too obsessed with painting, I was not allowed to take art classes. And I got my revenge by writing poems. And that's how it all began.
Wow. Well, why poetry though? What was the turn? Why not into prose or novels or some other medium?
It was a very strict school.
Mm-hmm.
We had almost no time alone, and poetry was something I could carry with me and write on the sly. I didn't have to have, pages and pages for prose, which would have been spotted instantly. I could scribble something on the back of my hand and then later transcribe it.
Uh-huh.
So it was the most portable. And also, I loved poetry from the start. And I had strange loves. I loved Keats. I loved early Yeats, not the late great Yeats, but the sort of immature, charming early Yeats. And it just got into my head. And I realized that there were other people out there with strange brains like mine, and that maybe it was a club I could join. And I regarded it as a host of kindred spirits out there. And I wanted to be among them.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is that. I mean, it's a community of people who think, a certain way and see the world. And, there is a big community in it. That story about, having the empty canvas and only having 1 hour to create something is really interesting when you think about how poets encounter the empty page. Sometimes for some poets it feels intimidating. Like, I don't know, there's this white space, anything could go here. I heard someone say once that every letter they add felt like taking away like 1,000 possibilities or something like that, And so there's that
scary idea.
It really is. So there's this way it can be intimidating, and like, I don't know what to write. I don't know where to go. But given that background, thinking about it like that blank canvas that you have to work with for a certain amount of time, do you feel like it's easier to approach the blank page like that because of that background, thinking through the lens of painting?
Maybe. I don't really worry about the blank page too much because the first thing you put on it ruins it forever, right? So I just, the way I work is I don't try to preconceive anything. I write messes and then go back and see if there's anything in the pile of garbage that I might be able to extract and turn into something. So I used to be paralyzed by the blank page, and every word I put down was wrong. But now I don't worry about it. Only later, when the poem is coming into being, do I worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear another poem. Do you want to read The World It Was?
Sure. The World It Was. I was a kid transfixed by the endlessly mutating, gloomy rooms among the trees, and I wandered far. At 17, I married thunder and wind and snow. I took vows. I pledged to be only half human, so only half guilty of our crimes against Earth and all its beings. Wherever I am, I visit Earth's memorial. Sometimes I leave a few words in the dirt on a car. The memorial surrounds us. Earth's body is its grave.
Yeah, and that was The World It Was by Chase Twichell. And these are poems from a new manuscript that isn't out yet, so we're getting to see a nice preview of it. And the manuscript is called The World It Was.
The World It Was.
Yeah, and so how did you come to that poem as the title poem for this manuscript?
Well, I knew that the whole book, as all my books have been, would be an elegy for the earth. And I realize also now, thinking about it, that world is gone forever. I mean, we're still in a world, so presumably it's still here. But the world that I loved, the first world that I loved, is gone. And yet it haunts me. So it's a presence still, even though it's gone. And so I call it The World It Was.
Yeah.
And it also echoes that phrase, what a world it was, what a blank it was.
Yeah. Well, it definitely does. So moving on, Zen Buddhism became such an important part of your life. How did you discover that, and what was the journey into that like?
Always interested in Zen. I took some comparative religion courses in college, and the one that really sparked me was Buddhism. And I tried meditating by myself, not knowing what I was doing, and didn't get very far. So I put it aside. And then years and years later, I can't even remember what it was. I was watching something on TV, and it was about Buddhist monks in Tibet or something. And it just stirred my interest again. So I went down in the basement and got a box of all my old college texts, including the Buddha books. And I just started reading them again. And it was like realizing that that was some kind of home for me. And I became really excited by it and read everything I could. And I decided to go to a half dozen Buddhist centers in the Northeast. My plan was to visit them all, meet the teachers, and then pick the best fit. But the first place I went was Zen Mountain Monastery near Woodstock, New York. And I walked in the door and I said, okay, this is it. I just recognized instantly that it was what I was looking for. And I never did go to any of the other places.
Yeah. And were you writing poems regularly at that time, or was it
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So how did that experience influence your poetry? Did it make you change the way that you write?
Yeah, it did. And it threw me a big curveball, actually. Because if you're raised in the Western tradition of poetry, metaphor is crucial. It's part of the bedrock of what we do as poets, seeing one thing in terms of another. I think of a couple of lines by John Clare, the British poet, who wrote, the mighty thistle or over all danger towers. In every place, the very wasp of flowers. So a couple of lines I first fell in love with, likening a thistle to a wasp because they both sting. They both have something sharp that stings you. Other than that, they have not much in common. But Zen tries to see things exactly as they are, without the spin of the intellect or any history or baggage you might bring to it individually. And if you have read much Buddhist poetry, one of the things that shocked me about it when I first really started to read it is it's almost entirely devoid of metaphor, which was a shock to me. And I found myself being deeply moved by poems that had no metaphor in them. And it made me really paralyzed for a while, because every time I'd start to write something and metaphors would come out, I'd have to second guess myself and say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not seeing things exactly as they are. I'm putting a spin on them. Mm-hmm. And some of the little Buddhist poems that I love do so much in such a tiny space without metaphor. I printed a couple of them out. Let me see, what did I do with them here?
Oh yeah, we definitely love to hear those. Metaphor is so interesting because we have the Neil Postman Award for metaphor, and we try to find and seek metaphor just in general for Rattle. And Postman said that a metaphor is an organ of perception, is how he called it. And and so it is that. And so thinking about poems that are stripping that out and being direct and speaking to the soul somehow without metaphor is a difficult thing to imagine sometimes. So I'm curious to see what
metaphor underlies everything. There's a metaphor right there, underlies, right?
Yeah.
It's completely embedded in our speech. But here are a couple little poems with no metaphor. This is Basho. Even in Kyoto, hearing the cuckoos cry, I long for Kyoto. That's a very profound poem, yeah?
Yeah, it's one of the great haiku. And, thinking about it as not a metaphor is interesting too. That there actually isn't metaphor there.
No. And here's a contemporary one, Jane Hirschfield. On the dark road, only the weight of the rope, yet the horse is there. I admire those because they get so much done in a tiny number of words.
Yeah. Couldn't you say that, for those, I don't know, maybe in a way the power, especially that Jane Hirschfield's thinking about that, is in the extended metaphor possibilities of that. It's sort of like a headless metaphor almost, because it's like, what does this, because we are so drawn to thinking in terms of that, you know what I mean? And so it feels like it's like letting that be the silent space around the poem is sort of what the signified is, if that makes any sense. So
yeah, that does make sense. And I think it works that way with metaphor and without metaphor, because what we bring to the poem is mind.
Yeah. Well,
so it's a dance between mind and words, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you was the relationship between poems and koans, because they seem so similar in the effect that they achieve, even though they go about them in a lot different ways, So what would you say that the relationship between the two is? Because there's some kind of like overlap in the Venn diagram, but it's not perfect, I think.
Well, first of all, I've never worked with koans. I do something called shikantaza, which is a different practice. I don't know why my teacher has never given me a koan, but he never has. So I can't really answer that from personal experience. For those of you who don't know, a koan is a question, sort of like a riddle, where you cannot come to an answer using your intellect. They are designed to defeat your intellect, because the intellect is seen as an enemy to simple, straightforward seeing. So examples would be, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or, does a dog have Buddha nature or no? And the teacher says, mu, M-U, which is a word that could mean all kinds of things, including no. So what do you do with that? They're kind of fascinating. But for me, what they have in common with poetry is that the intellect does not take you there. In a good poem, it's not rationality and abstraction that explain the poem to you. It's something that comes to you more directly, more instinctually. So that I think that they have in common, and that the poem defeats straightforward analysis. That's why it drives me nuts when people in school, teachers say, okay, what is the hidden meaning of the poem? A good poem doesn't have a hidden meaning. It is itself its meaning. And also the kind of analysis we often get in school, or at least I did, trying to translate the poem into intellectual discourse. It doesn't work. It can't be translated that way. And a koan can't be answered that way.
Yeah. I often want to say, I kind of catch myself sometimes I'm saying this. I often want to say that if it can be paraphrased, it's not a poem, Right. But that's actually not true, because a poem can be paraphrased, but it's like the thing within it that can't be paraphrased that make it the poem, And so,
right.
It's that extra layer of whatever it is, which is that mysterious thing that we do. I think when we meditate, poetry and meditation seem so interrelated. And it to me, maybe, it's the voice of the subconscious coming up and emerging outside of the constructs and expectations that you have of the world. Would you characterize poetry that way, as a way to, get through that like top layer of your consciousness that's sort of always getting in the way, that willful will that's too effortful and too focused on your expectations, and letting, the surprising things come up from deeper inside of you? Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you have to trust your gut as to what language means. And you mentioned Venn diagrams a minute ago. And I think that's a lot of how pieces of poetry work. One thing overlaps with another, and it's the part that's shared that is the crucial part. And but I mean, to go back to that Kyoto poem, which I love, you can paraphrase it by saying, isn't it interesting how when you have something, you still long for it, you still want it. You have all the money in the world, but you still want money. And you could give a million examples like that, but it doesn't do it the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think to me that poem's always struck me as is like a lament for the future, or like different selves, like different iterations of myself across time that won't get to have this. Like you're already feeling like you've lost the thing that you have because you will lose it eventually,
Yeah.
And so
that's another paraphrase.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite get
No, it doesn't. That's the thing. Yeah. And why I'm sure there's essays that go on and on about like one haiku, like, I don't know, 8 words or however many words that is. And you could just go on and on and on about it. I want to talk more about this topic, but let's hear another poem first in the meantime. Okay. Next up, we had Featherweight.
This is kind of a disturbing poem, so heads up. It has a subject that some people may find upsetting, as they say on television.
Yeah.
Featherweight. At 14, I taught myself to sew on a Singer featherweight, which I was an idiot to trade years later when seduced by a Bernina. As a child, I made clothes, costumes, things a feral kid would wear, or Huckleberry Finn. The only tricky part of sewing is the fitting, making clothes that fit exactly right. The actual sewing is easy. It's just manual dexterity, patience, and precision. Fitting is geometry and math. Geometry comes to me easily, but math is an old childhood enemy. Its door remains locked. Why? Because Mrs. E was drunk, so the second grade skipped multiplication and division in 1957? Was that when the trouble began? Does it date to the summer of catching up? The writhing and moaning over the multiplication tables? I was 6. He was my babysitter. I wasn't injured. No one knew. I knew. He was a friend of the family. It had nothing to do with math. To me, the geometry is simple. You dismantle the body's measurements into shapes traced on featherweight vellum, the sleeve, the bodice, the skirt. The parts of the body reunite when the garment is sewn, and the dress or the pants appear, held together only by thread.
Yeah, it's such a powerful poem. That was Featherweight by Chase Twichell. And the way the subject matter is, it's implied so clearly, but then left as a sort of a space around which to fill, makes it really profound and powerful, and avoids any kind of, just ways of being gratuitous or something with what happened. And I'm interested in that, in the construction of a poem like this, and given what we were talking about already, about the way that, it's sort of the mind getting out of its own way to write poems. What was the process of writing this poem like? And that, did you know you were going there? Or, how did what was the impetus for this poem? And when did you realize that was the topic it was really about?
Well, I had managed to avoid writing about that experience, which went on for some time, because it seemed so sensationalistic. And it seemed prurient, and it seemed nobody's business. And yet there it was, haunting me. So I decided I would look into it via poems. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad I did, because it enabled me to understand what happened more clearly and to put it to rest in a way that I hadn't been able to do before. And writing that poem, I wrote it a while ago, and I can't actually remember the exact process, but I do know that I was taking run after run after run at it and going nowhere. It seemed like I came up against obstacles that were insurmountable, no matter what I did. And then I realized that in itself, the mechanism of trying to go somewhere and failing, should be part of the poem. And so in the telling, there's distractions. The reader gets distracted into the kind of sewing machine it is, the kind of clothes the kid wore, the fact that the second grade teacher was drunk, and so the speaker is insecure about math. And these things have nothing to do actually with what happened, and yet they surround it. And so they were conduits into it. And I like the way the poem starts towards something and fails to go there, starts again toward it and fails to go there, and finally ends up going there.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like it was yourself getting in the way of getting that out? I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot in this conversation already is the interview we did with Dr. Ian McGilchrist about the bifurcated brain and the way that the left and right hemisphere just see the world so differently, that they're sort of at war with each other. And he talked about one thing where a patient with a a bisected brain, so it was each side was having separate control, would try to smoke a cigarette, and then the other hand, the left hand would throw out the cigarette because the right brain knew that it shouldn't smoke, and it couldn't, so it kept going back and forth trying to smoke and then not letting it smoke, and
there actually was an experiment done about that with people who had actually had that conduit cut between the two halves of their brain because in an accident or something, and at one point, a guy threw a punch at the interviewer, and his other hand came out and stopped it.
Yeah. So is that the process though? I mean, it's like this truth that like one part of yourself, and I don't know how much it's hemispheres exactly, or it's more layered than that, but like one part of yourself wants to get all these things out that we go through, like all these experiences that shaped us, whether trauma or other experiences too, like we want to get them out, but then the other part of our self doesn't want to address that, and so the process is that like it war with itself until there's the release of getting the thing out. So is that how the writing process felt? Because you mentioned obstacles being thrown in the way. Do you think it was yourself, one part of yourself throwing those obstacles?
Yeah, I think so. And each subject, I guess, has to go through something like that if it's a subject that's difficult. I wrote a book called The Ghost of Eden, which is basically an ecological diatribe and expresses my distress at the poor stewardship of our planet that we human beings have managed to do. And I forgot where I was going with that. Wait a minute. Right. So I ended up writing poems that were ecological diatribes. And I kept saying, okay, enough already. I've written enough of these. It's time to move on. And no matter what I tried to write, it would do a U-turn and go right back to that. So I said, okay, I'm stuck with this. I'll write a whole book of them. And I did.
Do you feel
but,
like...
you don't get to pick what you write, right? Do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important thing to mention for people who don't sort of understand the creative process. Like it's what even draws your attention isn't in your control. You can try to focus, and then if it's, your mind drifts to where it wants to drift. And it's that sort of other mind that's drifting, I guess, that you're studying and trying to understand in a Zen practice. Yeah. But so once you wrote that up, is there a release in getting to the poem like you needed to write? Is that how that book project where you kept turning back to the ecology goes?
Stops itching. It's an itch that stops itching.
Is there a moment that that you got it? Is it like, oh, there it is, and then it's done? Or do you like gradually just stop turning that way and you realize, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. I must be satisfied.
Well, once I locate where the poem is going, once it declares itself to me, it's not done. It just means I know how to finish it. So in that sense, you can only listen to yourself babbling for so long before you have to stop and make sense of it.
Well, let's hear another poem. My Illness is up next, and sort of halfway through the book. We're sort of trotting through some of the poems in this new manuscript.
My Illness, which, by the way, I do have, and which is something like long COVID. I won't go into more detail than that, except the medical world knows nothing about it. My illness. No one can explain it. Not the family doctor, neurologist, psychiatrist, naturopath, cardiologist, radiologist, endocrinologist, homeopath. It began 6 years ago with a virus Russell brought home from Peru. It took up residence in my body and rode the elevator straight to the penthouse where it lives on. It's a medical mystery. For 3 years, I rested and researched and watched Scandinavian crime dramas. I spent whole days in the Norwegian snow, somehow soothed by the distant anxieties. I spent $500 on supplements. I practiced accepting that I was ill. I didn't sleep, but I woke up in another body. The one I woke up in is old.
Yeah, and that was My Illness, which is a central theme for a big section of this manuscript. So what was that experience like? Like, when did you realize it was more than something that would just go away? One of the interesting things that I've been reading about, like not too long ago, over the last, since COVID era, is how much, just having the flu can make you change your how you feel for 6 months at a time, just a regular virus, not even COVID or something exotic. And then other things like toxoplasmosis gondii, which can change your behavior for the rest of your life just by having that infection. And so it is there's so many mysteries that we don't understand, that we just sort of say, you think, oh, I'm feeling a little different and think something's different, but then there's nowhere to put it. And then it ends up being things that we have no idea what they even are. So what was it like to discover that that was happening?
I had all kinds of things going haywire, and I went to different doctors for different symptoms, and they all said, I don't know what it is. And I finally went on Google, believe it or not, and put in all my symptoms, and up popped myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is the fancy name for chronic fatigue syndrome, and which long COVID is turning out to be kindred to, if not exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And I spent 3 weeks at Mayo Clinic, and they said, yep, that's what you have, but there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm going on 7 years now.
Yeah.
And they call it chronic fatigue syndrome, which is really a misnomer, because fatigue is the least of it. It causes all kinds of other problems, blood pressure problems, vision problems. I could go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unrefreshing sleep. And so a weird thing called post-exertional malaise, where I can go for a long walk with the dog, as I did today, and I feel fine. Mm-hmm. 2 days from now, I'll be back in bed. Yeah. It's a delayed response to exercise. Mm-hmm. It's just a mystery.
Yeah. Well, so much of biology is. It's such a mess. Our bodies are such messy, imperfect things, and the world is so full of stuff.
Yeah.
So how did that affect your poetry? Were you able to write through that? I mean, it feels like you turned some poems in that direction and explored that, which is what you so often do with your work.
Yeah, it causes cognitive dysfunction, this illness, which I fight against all the time. I blank out, as I did a little while ago when I got halfway through a sentence and forgot where I was going. And that happens sometimes often. It's the cards I'm dealt, so I try to play them as well as I can. Mm-hmm. I'm not as angry about it as I used to be. Why me was a theme for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was the practice of poetry in Buddhism helpful in not having that like anger reaction?
It was. It definitely was. Mm-hmm. To just to sit with it and just look at it with no spin on it and accept it for the way things are. Mm-hmm. Things as it is.
Yeah. Well, the next poem is a related to that topic too. Do you want to read What My Illness Said to Me?
Sure. What my illness said to me. The whole time you hoped I was gone, I lay snoozing inside you in a comfy bed, feeding and fattening. You want to call it the illness, but we've aged together, middle to old age overnight. So please acknowledge that. Say, my illness. I know you will always resist me, but remind you that in our earlier encounter, you did come close to yielding.
Yeah, and that was What My Illness Said to Me, personifying that we were just talking about. In the note, or in the interview last time from the Buddhist Poets issue, you mentioned having a low tolerance for decoration in poems, and
yes.
And that we life's too short for long poems that don't go anywhere. So how why do you think that is? Why should poems be as straightforward? It's very refreshing to read poems that are this tight and concise and say something. So why is that a focus?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just the noise in our lives now because of the internet, and everybody's on their phone all the time, and there's music in every store and every restaurant. You can't get away from it. And there's something to be said for silence and lack of all of the above. With poetry, I really believe that any intelligent, curious person should be able to read a poem, and that in this day and age, the attention span is way shorter than it's ever been before. There's statistics about it are just crazy. The average amount of time that a person's attention can stay on written text in 5th through 8th grade is something like 12 seconds.
Wow.
And then it wanders. And then it goes back. And that's just the way our world is. So it seems to me that our poetry has to be similarly streamlined. It doesn't have the leisure of going on at length because people won't read it. And I notice myself when I'm reading magazines, and I read a lot of magazines and read a lot of books, if poems are logy with description and are leisurely about going where they're going, I lose interest really fast.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's more than it used to be? I wonder about that myself.
Definitely.
With and I wonder if it's like because I read so many poems as submissions, I just have lower tolerance, or if it's just more the way life is now. I mean,
I think it's the way life is now, and look at what's going on in the world. I mean, never mind that drones are flying all over my head as I speak. It's fast and it's scary out there, and I don't think we have the luxury of singing long, complicated songs. Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested in getting there as fast as possible with as little baggage as possible, which is not to say not allowing for complexity or not allowing for the gist to emerge. And sometimes it takes a while for the gist to emerge. It takes a while and you have to wade through some stuff to get it. But I get really impatient when I start up reading a poem and the first 10 lines are about what the river looks like. I don't know why the river's being described yet. Maybe if you called the poem Jealousy and then described the currents in the river, I would get there faster. But I want poems to talk about important things and to get to it.
Mm-hmm. Getting back to something you said everybody should be able to, appreciate poetry. Do you think everybody should be able to write poetry? I mean, that's one of the things I think of with this like fast-paced lack of attention to, our surroundings and the little details of life and the things that really make life worth living. I mean, there's just flying in this steady stream of like dopamine hits everywhere we go. And, right. That's why I love the Buddhist or the haiku community, because haiku poets have sort of trained themselves to focus on little things because they're always looking for like a little haiku they can write. And right. And it just, I wonder if that's the antidote to all the problems. And to bring back Ian McGilchrist, who you mentioned before, his new book is called The Matter with Things. And it's that, getting away from the thinginess of the world and focusing on the deeper meanings of things and paying attention is just so vital to not being miserable. If you look at the right. statistics of how many people are anxious and depressed nowadays in the modern culture, it's huge. And do you think poetry, we get into this problem where we want poems, we want poets to be great, like a great thing. I can write great poems, and so I'm a great poet, But then on the other side of that, shouldn't everybody be a poet? And maybe does everybody have a chance to? If they worked at it, could everybody be a poet? And would it make, should we be focusing on having more poets or having more poems read, I guess is the question.
The question is kind of, it's a little sneaky because on the one hand, I think, of course, everyone should be able to apply their mind that way and their ear for music. But I do not think that everyone can be a poet. It's too hard. It takes too much work. It takes personal, emotional work. It takes a lot of study. It takes a lot of reading to become really sure-footed. Mm-hmm. Not that I know I'll ever be sure-footed, but I'm more sure-footed than I was in years past. But I think that people writing poetry does no harm in the world. And if it helps them clarify things in their life, good. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same thing as creating art. Creating art is harder to do than, it's not just the expression of emotion or the expression of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. It's the expression, what more to it than that?
It's the discovery. I think each poem has to make a new discovery. You can't just have an idea and write it down and that's a poem. There's a famous story, and I always forget which poet and which sculptor it was, but they were both French. The poet and the sculptor are walking along, and the sculptor says to the poet, "I have a great idea for a poem." And the poet says, "Alas, my friend, poems are made of words, not ideas."
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. I completely agree. Well, let's see. So I want to do more poems. Let's I'll say though, if you're enjoying this conversation, I think everybody is, please do click the like button once again. There's always like twice as many people watching live as I've clicked like so far. And if I say that, more people do. Also, if you have any questions for Chase, leave them in the chat windows, especially YouTube. That's the best place, but also Facebook. Still haven't figured out how to look at chat on X, but if you leave questions there, I will pass them along and try to put question all bold like Monica Dobos just did so I can see it. All right, well, let's hear the next poem, Chase. We have Death's Hors d'oeuvres next.
Death's Hors d'oeuvres. A whole section of the book is about getting old. Death's hors d'oeuvres. A school of dead gray fish drifts across my vision. Floaters. No names come when I call. Is this what old age will be like? No, this is old age now. I like to take little sips of the horror, morsels of poisoned meat. Each taste a foretaste. I'm preparing for future pain, not this pain. That's the lie I tell myself.
Yeah, great turn on that. That's Death's Hors d'oeuvres by Chase Twichell from a forthcoming manuscript. I always think about something Marvin Bell said. We were talking to him. He said that you never really get older. People just think you're getting older. And
And
then the last person to tell you you're older is your body. but you never feel any older. And so far in my life, I sort of feel I can sort of see where he's coming from. It feels like
I feel older definitely by the day.
So how is it, what is it like to turn the subject onto that in poetry? Is that the same kind of exploring as other topics?
It is, because you're confronting something in yourself that you don't fully understand, that you can't fully explain to yourself. You can't even paint a clear picture of it until you go ahead and try. And then for me, each poem is a little bit of enlightenment about this thing that I'm trying to understand, which is mortality. And I know lots of people, smart people, educated people, if you start to talk about mortality with them, they don't want to go there. And they'll just say, let's talk about something else. There's a great book by Roz Chast, the cartoonist, called Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant? And it's about the death of her parents. And it is a great book. It's all cartoons, her cartoon strips. Mm-hmm. But that's the response a lot of people have is, can't we talk about something more pleasant?
Yeah.
But
mm-hmm.
Death is interesting. Everybody wants to know what it is, what it'll be like.
Yeah, and it is. I don't understand. I never understood why it's such a taboo kind of in our culture. It is something that we have all the words to signify that. We don't want to even say someone died, they passed away, and all that thing. And we don't really talk about it much. You don't want your kids to think about it, and yet it's the thing that makes life meaningful. Actually, if you step back far enough and think about the fact that if there's no period at the end of a sentence, there's no sentence. Nothing is meaningful without that, ultimate thing. If you could live forever, it's that. I think that Alan Watts thing where he says, "What if you were God dreaming?" I love that little speech he does. But what would you do if you were God dreaming? And if you could live forever, you would get really bored. And if you're also magical enough to prevent a scenario you want, you would at least make a scenario where you think you could die to make it exciting. And so it does. But why do you think it's such a taboo? Why don't we talk about it?
Well, it's upsetting to people, and everybody's lost someone to death. And so you talk about death, you're talking about their loss. I lost my husband 2 years ago. So whenever anybody talks about death, my mind goes immediately to that, and then to my own death, which is still impending.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my teachers said once, "Why are you so worried about that? You're dying every day. We're all dying every day." My sister once gave a birthday card which said, "Congratulations, you're one day closer to death." It's funny, but it's not.
Yeah, well, and that's true too. And I always think, and I studied Buddhism in college too, and a little bit at the Zen Center in Rochester. And one of the things I always thought about is the reincarnation's role in Buddhist theology. And it seems to me that we're just reincarnated every moment, you know? And so every moment is a kind of act of reincarnation, and this like long string of them. And so we're dying all the time. Yesterday I'm not the same person I was, and in 7 years my bones will all be different, or whatever the timing is of that. And yet I feel like there's some continuous string, but that's just an illusion, really. Let's see. There's a question. I'm going to scroll back up. Monica Dobos want to know, back to poems. Do poems come to you while meditating? Do you stop and grab the pen or mind your meditation?
That's a good question. They do sometimes. And when they do, I try to make a mental note so that I can go back to that little epiphany or whatever it was later. Let's say I'm working on a poem and have been beating my head against the desk over a problem, and the solution comes to me when I'm sitting, then I will divert my attention and pretend that I'm sitting and actually be working on the poem. Because you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to follow your thoughts wherever they take you. You're supposed to just set them aside, let them go, and go back to the breath and concentrate on just being present. Mm-hmm. Which sounds easy and is really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And boring.
Yeah. What is it like, though, when a poem comes to you like that? Is there sort of a tenor that the poem has that comes to you in meditation? Are they different from other impetuses for poems, or is it all the same kind of stuff?
Well, I think if I'm sitting at my desk and my mind is open and invitational of poems, then there isn't that kind of constriction that there is if I'm trying to do zazen. Mm-hmm. And a poem, in order to get into meditation, has to be pretty persistent. It's like a mosquito that won't leave you alone if it gets through. Lots of times my mind will wander toward a poem and I say, not now, later. Mm-hmm. And that works and it's fine. But sometimes the poem whatever it is in the poem that's bugging me will be so insistent that I have to set time aside in my head for it.
Well, there's 2 poems left to read. Do you want to do The Second Year next?
Sure. These are from a whole series of elegies for my husband. The second year. For a year, I felt nothing. Spasms of tears, then again, nothing. I sent his scarves to one daughter, the fox painting to another, changed all the downstairs paint colors, put the martini glasses out of sight. The second year looked back on the first year and saw a widow.
Yeah, another great sense of movement in that poem too, as you talk about Russell's death. The Second Year by Chase Twichell. How much, we haven't really talked about the revision process for you, and you mentioned that you revise a lot and you work poems. How much of one of the things I wanted to talk about was how much writing a poem is like meditation, and is it having that intense focus on something, is it similar to meditation? To me, I feel like it is, because it's similar to me for sports. In sports, what I love about playing baseball is that I've done it so much that I'm just reacting in my mind, like the monkey mind or whatever you want to call it, is just gone. Yeah. And the ball is hit. I don't even know what's going on. Like, I don't think go run after the ball. You're just going and diving after the ball. And there's something about it that's just like the quiet of that one layer that's always like running, And the other place I feel that is writing a poem. So it feels similar to me. Do you feel that way, that it's a kind of meditation?
I don't. Mm-hmm. that's a good description of what it feels like to be writing a poem, though, in the middle of sport where it's instinctual and you're just open and responsive. Meditation, in a way, is the opposite of that because you're pushing all that stuff away. You're not letting it into your mind. No distractions. And so your focus is on one thing, and that is your breath and everything about the present moment. You don't even look around. You look at a fixed spot.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's not like that. But to answer your question about revision, to me, arriving at the first draft is the hardest part of the work. And I don't write a quick first draft. I mess around and move things around and change things. And it's only when I can perceive the structure of the poem and I know where the poem wants to go, then I start revising. I taught a workshop once which had a whole bunch of symbols that I asked the students to use. And one of them is it's a W, and the right leg of the W is the upright of an R. So it's WR, but all in one, if that makes sense. And it's writing and revising. And when you're writing a draft and you don't yet know where the poem is going, it's not the time to revise. It's the time to plow ahead. Only when you really know why something is in the poem can you describe it properly. You know what it's for. You know how to use it.
So in the revision process, I mean, we have the second year that we just heard. It's only 8 lines. It has that the last couplet is a real turn in it. How much of that, are you the kind of poet that writes a lot and then pairs it way back to these 8 lines? Or did it always have a similar kind of format and you're working with, with the shape of it and where it goes and how it's expressed?
Well, I guess you could say I write a great many lines and then condense them, but I don't do it by sprawling 5 pages and then going through it. I'll start something that's not quite right. I backtrack and start again, start again, get frustrated, move on to the next thing. I revise as I work, but I try, that's not really true. I don't really revise in the sense of figuring out how things need to ultimately be in a poem until I know what the poem is for. And so, but many people would consider the work that gets done in the process of getting to that stage to be revision. It's just a matter of semantics. I don't call that revision.
Yeah.
Revision for me is making it right once you know what you're making right.
Yeah, because there's no new vision to it. It's not a revision. It's the first vision, really, because you haven't seen anything yet. Yeah. So what are there any strategies that you employ to get it to, I know you want to keep it as pared back and as direct as possible. How do you know, what to cut and what not to cut? I mean, that's something that people struggle with all the time.
Well, I think whatever is in there has to be there for a reason. And if you can't see how it's part of the body of the poem, then it probably doesn't belong there. And I have 2 notebooks. One is called The Compost, and all the juicy little bits that I wish would go somewhere but don't go anywhere go in there, and I can go back and look at them later. And the other is called The Orphanage, and that is for pieces that are polished, that are finished, that just don't cut it. And so they're in The Orphanage, and I keep hoping another poem will come along and adopt them, but it rarely happens.
Yeah. Well, what about that? Once it's one of the things that I wonder about. Once you have success as a poet, is it easy to distinguish between which poems are working and which poems are not? Is there because you kind of have to keep. I was talking to Ted Kuzer. He was talking about how he has to always keep his guard up because anybody, if he sends them a poem, they'll just publish whatever. So he has to make sure he doesn't send anybody a bad poem.
Well, I don't have that problem, luckily for me.
Do you have any problem though? Because you have so much experience in this. Do you ever worry that you're sort of fooling yourself that something works, or do you have a real keen sense of that? And how do you maintain that sense of that, though?
Somebody once asked Picasso which of all his works was his favorite, and he said, "The next one." And so for me, I often fall into the trap of it being the last one, because whatever I've just finished, it's you're excited about it. You've got a new poem, yay. And very often I'll go back later and think, you know what, that's just not quite up to the standards. And I'll end up cutting some like that. They're finished, but they're just, I didn't really learn anything by writing them. Mm-hmm. And so those I pull out.
Yeah. So I guess maybe to close out one last question, is the writing like your happy place, kind of? Is it a place that you've cultivated as something that you always enjoy, and or is it a struggle, I think, in the end?
It's both. Mm-hmm. It's both. I mean, nothing is more fun than writing a poem when you're really writing a poem. It's the highest joy I've known in my life, including all other joys. That's the one. On the other hand, most of the time, it's boring, it's inconvenient, it means you don't get to go to the party on Saturday night, and there are a lot of drawbacks to it. But obviously I wouldn't keep doing it if there weren't more of a thrill than a grief about it.
Yeah, well, I thought that's what you might say. So I kind of loaded you up for that, because I think you're somebody who would admit that it's a struggle. It's a struggle sometimes, but then the highs are so high. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, do you want to close out with one last poem? The last one on our list was His Absence.
His absence. His absence is hard to pin down. No martini glasses in sight. No secret ashtrays. I can't ask him anything. Locked in a dark library, all that he knew and remembered is lost to us both. And the whole world of the night has gone missing, including the scent of our joy.
Yeah, another beautiful short poem, His Absence. And that whole section, I should say, is such a profound poem. It's so moving. The experience of losing Russell and being without him when you were so close, which people who know you guys know. And, and then having to deal with that and navigate that afterward is something, among death's taboos. It's something we don't talk about. And so, poetry is a guidebook for what you might have to experience in the future. It feels like that's a really important section of the book for that reason. So thanks for writing that and doing what you do, and for joining us as a guest today, Chase. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
My pleasure.
As I knew it would. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was Chase Twichell. You can find all of Chase's books, all 8 of them, at chasetwichell.com. That's Chase. Twichell is Twichell. chasetwichell.com. And the new book will come out in next year, I think. So looking forward to that. And thanks to Chase for being here. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to... Let's see, recall a time that you acted poorly during winter and write a poem that crafts a different resolution to the incident. So that was the prompt for this week. If you got a poem like that, remember it's a 1-page maximum, and it's only poems to this prompt you can share tonight. And if you'd like to share it, email your poem first to prompt lines. That's prompt lines, all one word, prompt lines at rattle.com. Email it there so we can show it on the screen as you read it. And then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy, on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching on X, you got to go to Facebook or YouTube to find the link. But we'll be right back, though. If you're enjoying the show and just want to sit back and enjoy more poetry, though, keep watching the stream. Right where you are is the best place to watch, so don't come over unless you want to share a poem. But if you want to share a poem, hop on over to the Zoom, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. I'm here with our prompt poems editor, Katie Dozier.
Hi.
Hey, Katie. We might get a kid cameo, too. I
We
hear
might.
a lot of footsteps.
Yeah, it's a little tough moving with 2 young kids in the house, but we're doing it.
It definitely is. So we'll get you as fast as we can, just to make sure. So the prompt for this week, once again, was to recall a time that you acted poorly during winter and write a poem that crafts a different resolution to the incident. So in the winter thrown in there, I'm sure, just to make sure nobody does, you have to have some structure and you can't just use an old poem.
And I like to make people, a little gentle reminder to employ our senses never hurt anyone.
There you go. Good.
So,
And but surely you never acted poorly.
acted poorly many times. Many times I have a lot of material to work with, fortunately.
So what do you got for us?
Okay, well, I have a hyphen.
Yeah, I did a hyphen too. When in
All
doubt,
right.
when you only have a little bit of time, do a hyphen.
Yeah.
And when you love hyphen.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of time, little time, go to the hyphen. Okay.
Yeah, either way.
Birthright. I remember it snowing from the bare window of the trial separation house. I hated everything about the beige new build, except the view of birches stoking the smoke of the sky. After my big sister went to school, I tiptoed to the other side to see if she'd left behind her jean jacket embroidered with flowers, maybe the rainbow V-neck with stripes. Her high school closet so full of ornaments, but my middle school mess unadorned. Turning in the coat of many colors.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's really cool.
Well,
I
thanks.
love the haiku.
Well, the haiku is so much closer to the prose that I normally do, but I actually went into a biblical reference, which I wasn't expecting there, with Joseph's coat of many colors, though I was also honestly first thinking of Dolly Parton's song. Yeah.
Well then, let's see. 1 second here.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. That should fix it. Okay. We got just a lot of the audio is just getting.
Well,
just
we're
too much-
leaving this house.
We are.
The audio's too poor.
And I'm gonna rewire everything, and then we won't be having problems. Because the last couple episodes, and there we were having the wrong mic for the Zoom.
Well, this is the last episode here.
So it's a good thing Chase could hear us the whole, or
Yes.
hear me the whole thing, because I had separate microphones for that too. Anyway, all right. Well, I love that. I love that. First of all, where you went with that, and then the turning in the coat of many colors. The three really possible interpretations of turning in makes it a really
Thanks.
nice haiku.
Yeah, I'm sorry for stealing my sister's clothes also. I stole her clothes all the time. It's true. If she weren't in New York City, still with a better wardrobe, I would probably still steal her clothing. It's true.
Yeah.
So, confessions abound.
All right. Well, mine, and I have to have a content warning. Going to be a couple 4-letter words in this one.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to, if you got the kiddos around.
Well, that's another thing to apologize for.
I guess so. Well, I had to say the incident.
I'm just kidding. I curse in poems all the time.
No, that's true. Anyway, this is mine, and this is just a real story. And there's sort of two things that changed the way I approach things. There was one time where I decided I was never getting in a physical fight again, and this is the time I decided never to lose my temper again. And so because it was just stupid. But anyway, this is the little anecdote. This is called temperament. And this is also a hyphen, okay? So here we go. Temperament. I hit the horn, then throw both hands over the dash, palms up like what the fuck is an offering. What the fuck, I shout at my neighbor who's shoveling snow onto the just plowed street. I roll down the window so he can hear me. What the fuck, I say again. They just plowed it. The neighbor stares at me. It'll melt, he says, and tosses another heap into the road. Then freeze. It's a traffic hazard. This is a blind corner on a hill. He turns to scoop more snow. I rev the engine and four-wheel over the berm. Asshole, I shout as I pass him. Asshole, he shouts back. Later that night, I see my neighbor at the school play. It's true. Both our daughters are sheep. How they can sing is never explained. Throwing a drape over the frenzied birdcage, cloud shadow. So there's my hymen. And that is definitely a true story. And I do, every time I see that guy, I mean, he's got the sweetest kids. And somehow we just have this secret history where we both shouted at each other.
Yeah.
But we're friendly now.
Can't count sheep anymore to relax, I suppose.
I guess not. All right, so that was mine. Let's see what everybody else has. And first up, let's go to Dick Westheimer. Why not? Hey, Dick, how you doing?
There was a metaphor that I forget which one of you brought up in in the interview about the one hand holding the fist back with the bifurcated brain, and that is such a powerful metaphor for what ruins my poems so often. It's, I don't know which part of the brain it is, but it's like I've got this impulse and it's working, and then the hand of restraint comes out and says, I'm not going there. So I'm going to live with that one. Speaking of which, I don't know if a poet, how one can write poetry without sort of some reconciliation with his mortality. It just seems like, that's like avoiding talking about the leaves falling from trees.
Yeah. It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, it's what it's all about,
Big
really.
exploration of it. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, I have a mercifully short one because I think I missed the second half of the prompt, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, we glossed over the fact that I did too, because I thought maybe the haiku sort of did it.
Oh, we're so funny. We went through the same process because I was like, I wrote my poem and then I was like, wait, there was a second part. And I was like, wait, I covered it. So I felt like I did it, but it was kind of accidental, to be fair.
So maybe I covered it here. It's only like 65 words, so we'll see whether I got both parts in, in the poem. So, I mean, this is a true story that my buddy and I, in the middle of winter, belly crawled to the manger outside the Indian Hill Ranger Station here, and we kidnapped the baby Jesus.
Wow.
We did leave a sign that said, "Who took the Christ out of Christmas?" But that's 17-year-old humor there.
Wow, well, that's very Grinch-like.
That is very Grinch-like.
Right.
Here we go. What we carry. I am not ashamed that HT and I kidnapped the baby Jesus from the ranger station manger that night. Our disgrace, we didn't free the plastic sheep from their eternal grazing, or let loose the donkey penned there for 2,000 years, whose only crime was bearing the weight of a whole new world packed on the sway of his back.
Yeah, another great ending there, Dick.
And this is the one, incidentally, Katie, that the Facebook robot must not have liked the kidnapping of baby Jesus.
Yeah.
And took down this post.
Yeah, Facebook is being pretty aggressive with the censorship these days,
they
I have
are.
to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sort of, I think of it as moderation. You have the other platform that I know you all love where like anything goes. And so
we
you
like
can
anything goes.
Yeah, I like anything goes. I don't like how many poets have gone, though. I missed them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you get a sale. I left because I would just get a sale with all these anti-Semitic, posts and stuff like that. It was just impossible to feel. So like you have that or you have this.
It's true.
I don't know
Yeah.
where the middle is. So anyway, thank you both. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much.
Dick.
We do too,
Thanks
Dick.
very much.
Yeah. And happy holidays too.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Take care. That was Dick Westheimer with What We Carry.
I was just going to say, I think I'm going to check. I'm going to go check on Charlotte because I don't like leaving when someone's reading. So I'm just going to say that. And then you're going to go. So I have no idea who's going to be next. But sadly, I'm going to miss them.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was loud, and now it's weirdly quiet. Yeah. So we'll see what's going on. All right. Well, next in line we have Carla Schwartz.
Hi.
Hey, Carla. Great to see you.
Good to be here. And what a fantastic interview tonight. And I wrote a Hyben as well.
Yeah. Well, the
And I
Hyben.
think
Once you get the Hyben bug, it's hard to get rid of
know.
it.
It is. And I think I did answer both parts of this. It's called Memories Returned Like Snowflakes Floating on the Cusp of Freeze. I wish I could remember when I most behaved badly in winter. Was it during that camp ski weekend in the Poconos when I stood alone with John Mack, full of careless lips in the walk-in pantry, huge cans of cling peaches lining the shelves, John's tongue thick but uninviting for my first French kiss, which, if I were paying attention, I would have known was meaningless? Was it that time when, as teens, 4 of us took my father's car up to Vermont to ski and on snowy roads skidded and spun onto the median? Was it that year, without thinking, I lived through 3 fall winters in a row, first in Belgium, there, my failure to spot a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make it to Berlin when the first chunks were pulled out, the crowds shouting and pounding until the wall came down? Or was it that next winter, opening my mouth to speak English in Australia when, after half a year of anonymity in Europe, a store owner tagged me for a Yankee when I asked about the red peppers they call capsicums, and I had to walk around owning President Bush's spitting up his broccoli? Or was it that same fall winter, my not speaking up when walking with friends of a friend in the snowy mountains over Easter, seated by the fire, listening to the story of how the dirty Jews killed Jesus, alone in an Australian wilderness with strangers too afraid to speak up? Was that my worst act? Not standing up and saying, look, I'm a Jew and you have been walking with me, and do you know any dirty Jews? Or was it those months that followed, that third winter, with dreary clouds of Vermont, the start of too many invasions and wars? Shouldn't I have stood up to protest from the start? Shouldn't we all have stopped what snowballed into the tumbling of 9/11? Or was I worst when I couldn't embrace my sister, keeping vigil over our father, his last days, that hospice December? And if I had embraced her, if I could have, would that have made a difference now? Remembering bad behavior, a winter of possibility.
Oh, very nice, Carla. Yeah, those memories return like snowflakes floating on the cusp of freeze. Great title, too. Sorry to everybody who was watching because I put up the wrong haiku the first time it was the haiku. And I spent a little while trying to find my place in the haiku. And then, because the other one was a Hyben, too. But we get back in the track. But thanks so much for sharing that, Carla.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's
Thanks.
wonderful as always. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
There's Carla Schwartz with a great title, too. Memories return like snowflakes floating on the cusp of freeze. Let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Ooh, I was just writing a comment to her, but I'll just say it out loud. I really liked how all the different images went with like a snowstorm. Like you had all like it almost felt like a flurry of all these different memories as she was trying to work through it, and I really liked that.
Yeah, it was a great conceit for the poem, for sure.
Yeah. So I went with one from college. At the time, my dad's dad, my grandfather, was living with my family, and he was slowly dying. And my youngest brother was at a boarding school because my mom couldn't manage all of the different things that were going on. And so my brother and I, who were in college, were going to pick him up. And when we went to go pick him up in West Virginia, the GPS took us a really not great way. And we ended up with some creek crossings that we never should have crossed the first one of. And so I was thinking about that as I worked through this, and the different ways that we as college kids dealt with that along the way. So I've named this one Crossing Myself.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Go ahead.
I should say, let's go back to that gas station, back to the electric light's buzz, back to that final bar of dying signal. We can take the long way, the safe way, the paved path with no frozen hike out, with no route up West Virginia mountain in bare country in only flip-flops and a light jacket. Let's say, I don't want to hack it. I want to get home. Instead, the gravel growls as heavy-jowled trees lean closer, and the last car behind us turns down a dark drive, beams thinning to nothing. I should say, something isn't right. Instead, I trust the GPS chirping 20 minutes to the boarding school, to our brother, to some other light than the frigid stars those tree limbs keep hiding from us. And when the road dives under rushing water, I rise in my seat to look. A creek, bubbling like a campfire kettle, dares us to test our mettle against its current. And college kids are always testing, always investing future lives in the current. So, of course, I tell you we can make it. That someone has already taken it tonight. Of course, I point out the light glinting on the still wet tracks where the dirt road climbs back out on the other side. What a ride. The river pushing at our wheels, the squeal of tires climbing the bank. You yank the clutch, and the jolt of safe across leaves us both so alive we could cross anything. Only then we arrive at the second crossing, a deeper river, tossing foam in eddies along the edges, spinning them into galaxies before plunging them down black holes. Let's go back, I say at last. And you agree. I think greater speed might help us fight the greedy current, so you gun the engine. No guardian angel's intervention this time. The blazer, baptized beneath the splash, a grinding crash, and the dash goes dark. We're out in the winter woods, on the dirt road, no way to be towed, no bars of service, my nervous heart hammering, fear clamoring all our endings, spending the night in the dark.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, very intense, with great musical reading and energy of it too, crossing myself. And I had a similar experience. It was funny, because I have the same kind of thing. There's a freeway going up to the mountains, and sometimes that's blocked. And I noticed a dirt road, and I followed it on the map, and was like, oh, that's a road the whole way. And so we went, and it got worse and worse, and you're sort of wondering where the road is. It was like coming over a mountain and through like a flood thing. And then, and we have an Outback, a Subaru Outback is the car we have. So it's 4-wheel drive, and we were sort of making it, but man, it was getting scarier and scarier by the minute. And I finally made it, and it was like, the kids were in the back seat too. And I was like, oh my God, if we get stuck here. And then I found out that every time the freeway backs up, there's people that get stuck there. There's a whole club of people with like Jeeps and winches and stuff that like their Saturday hobby is to just pull people out of the dirt, and they post photos on their Facebook page of like the highest end car, like a Lamborghini stuck in the thing and stuff like that.
Was this in West Virginia? Because I'm wondering.
No, this is in Southern California, like on the way to Las Vegas.
Goodness. So, what happened was we were at a gas station, and I called my parents. And I was like, it says we have about this long to get there. And then I hung up, and we lost all cell signal. And so I flipped off my phone, and we just kept going, and it turned to gravel, and the other cars turned off. And then we came to the first creek, and we went across that one, came to the second one, and it was much deeper. And when we turned around to come back, because we'd already gone, I did tell him, I think we should go faster this time. Bad idea. Don't go fast across running water.
Well, definitely. Well, I vowed never to take that road again. So
yeah. Turned out if we'd kept going, there were 7 different creek crossings we would have had.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
well, you would have gotten stuck. Anyway, glad you didn't. Thanks so much for sharing that, Christiana. It was Christiana Doucette with Crossing Myself. All right, let's go next to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. Great to see you.
Oh, great to see you. Great interview.
Thanks.
So I have a poem that's probably not as personal as it should be. It's more of a persona poem, but at least the persona behaved badly and re-envisions what he should have done.
Well, anywhere anybody wants to take it, we're always happy to. So glad to have. And I can't remember who this is, but I love the character. Like, it's so it brings back one of those memories. It's like disembodied. People will see it in a second if you're watching on the stream.
Yeah, I thought I should put a picture of him in there. Okay, it's from let's see. Frosty Regret. Clues in the title, kind of.
Yeah, there you
yes,
go. Now
Reddit,
I place it. Okay.
Yes, Reddit, I am the asshole. And I'm sorry to give out dramatic irony, but when you've been roasted as publicly as I have, why deny it? And I only wanted a little magic, that sense of wonder that I had when I pulled my first rabbit out of a hat, the last time the rabbit didn't hate me. I thought the kids would ooh and ah at my tricksome tricks and sublime spells, but all of them kept on laughing at me, and my dad thought I should be playing football, and even my mom thought my sawing and disappearing tricks were kind of weird. And so, do you really wonder why, when I found out my hat was magic, I just wanted to hold on to it and not ever let go for nothing? To be honest, I still think it was my goddamn hat by law and custom. But it all got messy, messy, messy. It didn't even have to be that way. If only I had decided to give up the hat, I could have been somebody extra special. Professor Hinkle, the magnanimous magician, father of Frosty, savior of snow, superb. But instead of leading the parade, I became the mustache-twirling nemesis in a Bass Rankin cartoon. I guess I should be grateful that I got probation. But I mean, who gets probation from Chris friggin' Kringle? And it turns out a zillion isn't even a real number. So how was I ever going to know when I'd written "I will not be evil" enough times to qualify for a magic deck of cards? And I never really learned. I stayed greedy for the glory of Christmas, always wanting a shinier star on the tree, a street that looked more like a snow globe, the perfect present, always. I remember when my mother was losing her memory, and it seemed like all she could remember was how weird it was when I played at Sawing the Girls in Half. I made myself believe I could take her on a road trip and have the family together for the perfect holiday, as if North Pole magic could cure dementia. That turned out messy, messy, messy for sure. But I still just want magic and wonder, and I wonder if that's so very sinister.
Aw, there's the picture. I see him a little bit differently now. Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Yeah, I tried to redeem him a little.
Yeah. Yeah, from Frosty the Snowman, the original cartoon, which I haven't seen yet this year, actually. So we only have 10 days left. We better watch that.
I think it aired last week on whichever network.
Yeah. Well, a holiday classic. Thanks so much for sharing that, Brian. So fun.
Thanks.
Yep, take care. There's Brian O'Sullivan with Frosty Regret. Let's go over to France and Siobhan Brownlee.
Hello.
Hey, Siobhan, how you doing?
Hello. Good, thank you. For me, this incident happened only a few weeks ago, so it's very, very fresh on my mind. So what I've tried to do here is some rhyme. So I've devised a rhyme scheme where I have stanzas of 3 lines, and the first and the third end rhyme, the word at the end of each line rhymes, and then the second line, the word at the end of the second line becomes the rhyme for the following stanza, first and third line. So that the second line generates the rhyme for the following stanza.
Yeah, is there a name for that? That looks familiar.
I don't know. I kind of just thought of it. I don't know if it exists already.
Well, maybe somebody can weigh in on the chat.
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. Okay, great. Well, let's hear it.
Anyway, it's called padding. Wisps of mousy hair, disquieted eyes, fluffy rainbow scarf, backpack curved. She halts me from the shop. What lies by the padded jacket in the swerve of her lips? I'm lost. People rush anonymous beelines, crossing spurred. Platform number 1, crush of suitcases. Where is it, please? Straight ahead and down. A touch on my sleeve. Could you take me? Geez, I'm behind time for my dinner date. Her gaze wide open, Damocles. No, I can't. Skids away on the plate of floor. I don my hat, woolly glove steps my head, a figure of 8. Glass of white wine, silver cutlery. I'm sure now, yes, it was an error. Conversing swamped, the absentee on my mind. Platform 1's on upper deck. Did she miss her train, was stranded and cold night struck her? If only I could downplay my terrain. If I had encircled her padded arm, she would be safe and myself humane.
Oh, well, humane to worry about that too. That's padding. Thanks so much for sharing that. And Jared Campbell came through with what I was thinking of. It was terzarima as the form that has that rhyme structure anyway.
Oh, yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for telling me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, very cool. I love the rhymes in there. Thanks for sharing that, Siobhan.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Siobhan Brownlee with padding. And let's go to Jared Campbell. Why not? Hey, Jared.
Hello.
How you doing tonight?
Doing okay. How are you?
Great. Let's see. So what do you got for us?
Floating.
Okay.
Trochee, I am, dactyl, I am, trochee, anapest, I am, who is? Trochee, I am, I feel the words falling on me like rain, but nothing gets in. My mind is so light with anxiety, it floats away above the lake-like surface of the words. It floats up into the leafless trees. It floats away and dissipates. I am trochee, anapest trochee. She pauses for laughter at the joke. I'm trying to replay what she said to find the needle of meaning in the haystack, but there's nothing there, just fistfuls of slowly molding hay. She says, "It's funny. Funny is a relation, and nothing relates to anything. Everything is its own self, and each self weightlessly floats away from each, rising up from the lake, into the trees, up to the clouds and dissipating till nothing's left. And finally she stops talking, and she looks into my eyes, and she can see there's nothing left."
Well, really fun poem too. That trochee I am, and it made me. I never realized or thought of it. Is it the case that all the, I mean, I am. No, they're not actually. They don't match the feet, but they're
It's
close.
so inconvenient for a poem like this that I am, trochee is obviously a trochee. I am is a trochee.
Yeah.
Dactyl is a trochee. So you can't, by giving the words, achieve the rhythmic diversity that the words actually try to describe. Like it ends up being very, very trochaic.
Yeah, I don't know why I never had that thought, but the thought that it should be like we should just pick like onomatopoetic words
then
that
it would be
are
easier
they
for people to
embody the things
learn.
they are. Let's completely redo
let's just
all
do
of
it.
scansion.
Yep.
And rename all the feet to something where they make sense.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know why it never occurred to me that because
maybe different types of shoes.
Yeah,
like
I think because it starts out trochee, I never thought trochee is a trochee.
Yeah, but
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mind blown situation.
Definitely. Well, that's a very fun poem as always. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jared.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Katie's back as we see. Hey, Katie.
Hello, I'm back.
All right. So let's go next to Chelsea McClellan. Oh, the festive Christmas tree back there. Hey, Chelsea.
Is the season.
Let's see. So what do you have for us?
I guess I attempted to write down one of my intrusive thoughts, and it's called "While Loading the Car, Intrusive Thoughts."
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
It happens like the real thing always says it does, all at once, and then a slow rewinding. I watch the last red flash of my 2-year-old's light-up shoe as it rolls off the road, slides across the river ice. The flashlight beam on snow, its white circle tracing the river's otherwise night-dark ledge. Someone's voice ringing my neck with her name, my 4-year-old. There, halfway up the hill, no hat, no coat, and my boy, rocking each other. The upper thigh of my jeans as my hands slide into an empty pocket, with no sign of my phone or a house to walk to. My boy's lower lip pale blue. The next day's bright sky, revealing all three of us dead on that hill. My dark blue shoe was inclined on the second stair, my hands still knotting the laces when I came to, quickly grabbed his red light-up shoes and her matching pair, rushed them to the car, tied them tight as a tourniquet onto their protesting feet.
Oh, that was while loading the car. Intrusive thoughts. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Chelsea McClellan. Yeah. All right, and next up, let's go to Rod Deasy.
Hello, good evening.
Hey, Rod.
Hi.
How are you, Tim and Katie?
Oh, we're great. Yeah.
I have a formal poem for you tonight. I don't usually write formal poems, but this one is formal. It's called "Ripples Run from the Thrown Stone." How did it happen? I'm not sure. It started with a split, that's clear. And taking sides plus stupid pride. We were blind, we could not see. With no bad intentions, we became estranged. Then came black nights, which sometimes spilled on winter days that were soon filled with pain and blame, nowhere to hide. Lost in work, paths not crossing, days packed tight and quickly passing. Nothing changed. For long years, anger marked my face and stalled my closing of the space between us. Now I've let things slide and ignored my deep felt doubt. I sent a Christmas card, reached out. Seemed so strange. I gave up, but an email came on New Year's Day. It lit a flame. I found love slept, but never died, and rose up where it used to be. Old burdens fell away from me. Things rearranged.
Oh, what a nice story. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rod.
You're welcome.
Yeah. That was Rod Deasy with Ripples Run from the Thrown Stone. Yeah. Next, let's go to Hammett Malik.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
It's great to see you.
It's really good to see you both too. I hated this all week, but really I didn't find anything that I could write about, and then it slapped me in the face a bit later. Okay. Winter windscreens of my mind. Frost under my nails reveals what I've buried. My eyes have packed their bags and sit watching, ready to tug on optic nerves to be snapped back inside. My nose is blocked, feigning flu, and the frizz of my hair is a halo. My body is incognito in case I'm recognized through the glass. The cold of winter does something to my kindness. Stalactite shards form under the S's, waiting for someone to stay a little too long and expect a little too much. It's been 40 years, you're probably dead again. I'll bet there was nothing wrong with your marriage, that the cold ogre was a duped woman waiting, and as old enough to know better negate grooming. I dress my shadow in topaz and quartz, paint no in frostbitten cherry on her lips, turn her head to the mirror and her pen to a dagger. This calendar houses some unseasonal chills, but my climate is a menu board of scratchings, just like your stale promises. And I dare your ghost to lie under my words again.
Yeah, powerful poem. Winter windscreens of my mind. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Hammett.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Hammett Malik. Let's go to Zachary Honeycutt next.
Hey guys, Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Hey, well, Merry early Christmas. But...
Yeah, it's getting too close.
Yeah. So, okay, I don't know if Katie told you, Tim, but so I was having trouble trying to figure out what to write about because I couldn't think of anything bad I did at winter time. So I kind of imagined something that I did bad from the perspective of someone, and I decided to incorporate that into this sequel to what I did last year, The Eve of Saint Nathan.
Yeah. So Katie did warn me about this, so I'm prepared.
I did tell him it would be one page, though, so I hope that I warned him correctly.
You did, because there's one thing we wanted to know. If you're looking, we have the one-page rule, but in one of the preview, it like cuts out formatting in a weird way, and so sometimes it goes a little out of the next.
So if you open this in Google Docs, it's one page?
Probably. We hope so. Also, there's like a big spacing, so I think it would be one page. I think he's clear.
All right, I'm excited.
But it was very fun last year too.
Yeah, it was.
And now Katie's in the crosshairs.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you said you like poems that have no boundaries or something. Earlier in this show, this is one of those poems. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well here we go. Buckle up.
Okay, here we go. Buckle up. The Nightmare Before Katie's Christmas, a sequel to the satire, A Visit from Saint Nathan. 'Twas the night after Christmas again. At the office of Rattle magazine, all the poets were stirring again, especially Katie Green. Poor Katie was fidgeting from all the eggnog, but thought, one more submission and finally I'm done. Then I can return to the other poets outside who are enjoying the party and having fun. When suddenly, on her computer screen, to Katie's wandering, weary eyes did appear a 500-page submission from Zachary Honeycutt that filled her with such frustration and fear. She spit out the candy cane that Tim had given her as an extra wedding gift, and despising the bad thing Zach had done, sipped the eggnog begrudgingly, working a darker winter shift. 2 hours earlier, while the Nutcracker theme was playing, Katie began handing out the lot. She noted Mike and Hamat had already made the nice list, but many of the other poets did not. She tiptoed gingerly as a solstice sprite, stuffing poets' stockings with rejection letters through the house. She even handed out a tiny one in Spanish to the poets in translation and a bilingual mouse. She floated one to Ernest, who was being ghosted by a ghost with a body but no face, then slipped one under the closet to Christina as she wrote about coats trapped in liminal space. She found Erica Reed unwrapping a Secret Santa Blu-ray gift box of the entire Star Wars multiverse, then gave her a rejection as she pulled a George Lucas and wrote a prequel to her chapbook titled simply Ghost Man on First. She paused for a moment, feeling blue about giving one to Kim. Nicola Fryer was green, but not because she was marrying Tim. Katie leapt atop a table and whipped one toward the loft. It bounced off Kelly and smacked Sandy in the face, though it was meant for Mr. Croft. She threw one to David Kirby, who was pretending to braid Tim's hair while TR was reading a psalm. Then she dove toward Mistletoe to help ward off a penguin, trying to put the moves on Caitlin Bucksbaum. She gave one to Nate, who had retired his Santa suit and was busy mingling with Sharon and Jamal, and even handed one, in the form of a ghazal, to Maz bin Bilal. Carlo was sitting at the table with Mary, talking about her hot new book, Recalibrating Gravity. Then she let her borrow her headphones so she could take a listen to Katie's first audio rejection, read by Roderick D.C. You've been rejected by Tim and Katie, though you should know they held your Hyben in the highest regard. So go out and have an adventure, exploring the nearest outskirts of your own backyard. Nivi smiled through her teeth, reading one of Katie's rejections while Brian did an Irish clog. Then she took some booze she nabbed off Christina and swiftly spiked the bowl of eggnog.
That was great, Zach. So much fun. Yeah, and I'm so glad you noticed that we're not going to have a show next week.
Yeah.
So this is how you had to do the Christmas on today. So great.
And he followed it up. I think it fit the prompt enough.
It definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah, and you reminded me though. Like every year, I get like one little thing of eggnog, have like 2 sips, and I'm like, oh, I don't actually like eggnog. It's what I do with pumpkin spice lattes every year at Starbucks. Also.
Yeah, I'm not an eggman. I'm not an eggnog man myself, but since people hate it so much, that's why I included it in the
Maybe the
poem.
problem is I've never spiked it though, right? That's an incredible amount of work you put into that. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, that is. Thanks so much, Sciku. That's always fun.
Yeah, that's really nice. I'm sure that it means a lot to me. It'll mean a lot to everybody you mentioned in that poem. That was really fun. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Yes, always a pleasure. Happy Christmas. See you
Merry
guys
Christmas.
next 29th. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much, Zach. Yeah, it was Zachary Honeycutt with The Nightmare Before Katie's Christmas. All right. Next, let's go to Tina Dennett-Claw.
Hi.
Hey, Tina.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. So I wasn't very imaginative. I just remembered my most recent bad thing. So so yeah, I followed the instructions to the letter. So I'm rewriting my most recent bad thing. And so I usually when I'm upset, it's my husband who hears all about it, whether it's his fault or not. So, and you know, we all know that it's usually the husband's fault. But so, but unfortunately, this time in real time, I discovered that my computer was running amok in real time on the air, and I was really alarmed and then very upset. You all got to hear about that.
My computer runs amok like every episode lately.
Yeah.
So,
well, I wasn't sociable. Yeah, it took me quite some time to climb down from that, but I wasn't sociable at all, and so I wanted to rewrite the conversation. It is intended to be humorous. Now, not everybody understands my humor, so if something hits wrong, just realize that it's you know, Tina's idea of humor. But so here we go.
Okay.
All right, my new computer came with AI. Can you hear me? Yes, from Tim and Katie. Oh my gosh. My computer unmuted me on its own. Katie turns to Tim and whispers, "Can it do that?" Yes, he nods. Good job, AI. Katie enthused. Myself, alarmed. I've named it Jai since it dashes about and doesn't listen. Perfect time for Katie to tell me, the next poetry space is on AI. Maybe I should turn on a poetry function. Katie brightens. That's part of what we'll be talking about on Friday. All right. In the meantime, if Jai is going to unmute me on its own, I'm going to have to stop swearing like a sailor.
It's always listening.
I think it was Dick who suggested that I go to a bar and try to talk to strangers, and so I imagined that I was a crusty old sailor trying to show pictures of my cats. So, anyway, that will become a poem at some point, Dick. Thank you for the idea. All right, thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Tina. Yeah,
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, Tina Dennett-Claw with my new computer game with AI. All right, let's go to Mike Bales next.
Thanks to Zach, I made Katie's nice list.
Yay!
Now I can sleep tonight. I didn't think I'd come up with something, but I did. Just wrote it and emailed it to you, Tim.
Yeah, I just got it. It's hot off the press 18 minutes ago.
That's my favorite kind of poem.
It's set in St. Cloud, where I went to Minnesota, where I went to grade school, and I was friends with someone across the street. My mom was friends with his mom, and his mom always, when she moved to the suburbs of Minneapolis, St. Paul, said, it's good to be from St. Cloud. I mean, from. But my attempt at skating didn't go well. This is almost like psychology today, where you rewrite a life story to make things better. This is called Respite. The smooth ice glistened on a Sunday afternoon as the cold air whispered and drew us together in a park near the grade school in St. Cloud. My uncle on the farm said, "This is Minnesota, where men are men and women are hardy." This was fourth grade, where we learned catechism and spelling, and the nun took us through exercises to make reading fun. As I stood to the side, my ankles were weak, but my spirit was strong, so I could join my friends skating on the ice. The sun peered through clear skies, and I knew I could fly. I learned to let go so I could dance with my friends as we circled the ice, and the excitement felt kept us warm.
Yeah, I love that ending. Great story, Mike.
I'm terrible on ice, I have to confess. Like, really, I mean, I grew up mainly in Florida, so I don't have a ton of experience. But, like, when we're in the mountains of California and there's, like, a small... I'm like, how do you walk on this? How do people function in this?
You have to walk like a penguin.
I never skated. I had to rewrite my story. I mean, my ankles set. And the time I tried roller skating, I was the one who clung to the bar at the edge of the rink.
Me too.
So,
Yeah,
I
me
was.
3. Yeah, but I never ice skated either, so no skating in my.
There's an ice rink here in the Woodlands.
Oh, we could do it.
Save your ankles. Save your ankles.
That's good advice, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Mike.
Take care. There's Mike Bales with a respite. Let's go to Mary Lisa D. Diminishes. There you go. Hey, Mary.
Okay.
Hey, Mary.
Hi.
Hello. How is everybody tonight?
Great. Yeah, great to see you.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
So let me pull this up. Where did it go? All right. So yeah, this is a tough one. I thought I was perfect. So, I was like, I can't do this prompt. I'm too perfect. I have never done anything wrong. And then like I was like, I think I was just laying there last night, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I know what I feel really, really bad about. So okay, this is the poem.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking of all the things that are wrong with it since listening to Chase Twichell. Like there's no metaphor in here, and
well, it's
I
not
don't
a guide.
worry.
That's Chase's style. There's only one way.
Okay,
There's many ways to write a poem.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Late in November. It probably wasn't easy for my mother to have a daughter so unlike her, uninterested in changing baby doll diapers, no passion for blue and white tea sets or skirt sets. Instead, I soared down steep hills on skateboards, and that was me running footballs with my cousins, me on roller skates, me on a bicycle, me sneaking rides on my boy cousin's motorbike in the backwoods where no one could see me. And that was me driving away one day in my quick little red car. But if I could go back, we can never go back. I'd change one night when late in November, icy stars sang above where I was supposed to be with my sister and brother, performing on stage for some legion of people, singing and dancing, high-stepping in tap shoes and swinging my Christmas skirt to the tune of Entertain Them. But I wasn't there where I should have been. I'd gone off with 2 new friends. She said she needed her ballet slippers. He said he'd drive us to get them. But on the way back, he took a detour, pulled over, parked in a field where we shared big swigs of bitter whiskey, and she and I both kissed him, my throat on fire. We took turns kissing him, me and the girl. Her name was Robin, and she was older, and so was he. And I just went along, lost track of time so that when we got back to the Legion's lot, the cars were gone. The show was over. The house lights were out, and my sister and brother and mother and father were waiting for my return. They hadn't called the cops yet, only because I left word with my sister who saw me leave and said, oh, that Robin, you shouldn't hang out with her. But now we were back, and the silence in the car where my family waited was worse than when we got home. And inside the door where my dad punched me so hard I flew over the back of the couch, and it didn't hurt at all. Maybe because I was still a little drunk, and I think if ever there was a reason for justified violence, I could excuse my dad this one time. He didn't know if I'd turn up dead or not at all, and I was sorry. I had no idea. He must have really loved me.
Yeah, well, another great memory. Thanks so much for sharing that late in November. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, and another great night of wonderful poetry.
Thanks, Mary Lisa.
Thanks so much, Mary
All right.
Lisa. All right,
Good
take
night.
care. Good night. Yeah, that was Mary Lisa D. Diminishes was late in November. And let's go next to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hey, Laura, great to see you.
Thank you for tonight. I have I also have a 4-letter word in this poem, uncharacteristically, but it is an accurate rendition.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of accurate renditions tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unswerving. Imagine I hadn't swerved on sheet ice and the truck behind hadn't jackknifed, lurching toward us. Imagine we weren't drawn to raise our hands, slow motion, covering our faces as if our lifelines could stop a truck. When sitting up so straight beside me, Father said, "My dear, we must duck." Imagine I had thought of something elegant, a follow-on to blurt from the driver's seat into that starry Virginia night. For example, "And death shall have no dominion," instead of "fuck." Or maybe "Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun," a good Auden line for a college student driver in an accident with a loved one, the passenger. I could never help but feel he deserved better. A miracle. The truck really did slide to a stop, looming over our windshield, causing not even a crack, harming not even a hair on me or my old world father. We came home, unpacked the moon, and put the sun back together.
Aww.
Yeah, that's
Aww,
sweet.
that's really wonderful.
Yeah, unswerving. Thanks so much for sharing that, Laura.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and Laura Berg with Unswerving. And that's going to wrap up the Zoom portion of the episode. Let's see if there's a couple people who are here but haven't. Let's see. Yeah, Ted Guevara's got one from Winter Past. Here's Ted's photo, as he always includes a photo, and it is this. We got a church in the snow. So let's see what the poem is. Grades. Winters can never be mirrored. Their frost always breaks the exact reflection. But it was there, like the embedding of his footprints. The snow showed the depth with little shadows inside the heels. "Where are your shoes?" he had asked, in my most understanding self. I had shed everything, spirited and collegiate about me. "I can't call home," he explained. Then he became purple-lipped. Discipline must have frozen stuck on his skin, maybe deep to his bones. Parents, which he rarely mentioned, were at those heels. Knowing him, he tried hard to be weightless on them. Customs were there too, an expectation that one had reached the veins, hardened his intentions like icicles. It was 17 winters ago, and for the life of me, couldn't recall what scale of excellence was followed and reflected upon. Very interesting. Thanks for that. That was Grades by Ted Bernal Guevara, that memory coming back in the winter. And let's see. Yeah, we'll do Nivi's too. Nivi had the mango heist. Let's read Nivi's really quick. The mango heist. Summer had just died, but the air still stuck to the back of my neck. Winter wasn't cold here, just less loud. The mango tree near the temple hung heavy with late fruit, gold skin splitting like laughter too sharp to hide. I climbed, not like a thief, but like someone owed something. Below, Perry saw me. I plucked one mango, then two, then threw one at her. She didn't catch it. It cracked open on the ground, flesh bruised, sweet wasted. If I could change it, I'd hand her that first fruit, both of us grinning, fingers sticky, cheeks streaked with gold. We'd leave the rest hanging, knowing there's a kind of plenty that doesn't belong to us. Yeah, what a
really nice.
Beautiful ending on that. There's the mango heist by Nivedita Karthik. All right, and Dr. Q is here too. Let's read Dr. Q's. Always keep your dinosaurs safe. Very short one from Dr. Q. And is this always keep your dinosaurs safe? A crisp winter trek, alas, I forgot Mucklucks for my dinosaur. He slipped. I tugged on his leash, but down the cliff. By snow tires, Dr. Q. Well, thanks for that, Dr. Q. That was very fun. I always wondered why the dinosaurs went extinct.
I thought mucklucks wasn't a real word. I thought it was a word you made up until this moment.
It was a word. I knew it was something that goes on your feet, but I didn't know what it actually was.
Wow, it's a real word. I thought it was just like a word you made up. That's really
Yeah, that's what I call my super warm socks.
That I got you.
Yeah, that you got me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 pairs, actually.
Yeah, I
One
know.
each year. Yeah, I got a new pair and an old pair.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for the mucklucks. Anyway, always keep your dinosaur safe. Great advice from Dr. Q to wrap out the Rattlecast. Let's do the Sciku now. And the Sciku is based on this article. And I decided to flip the way I do it so Katie doesn't see the Sciku ahead of time.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't get a spoiler there.
Yeah, because Katie always gets a spoiler, but now she doesn't. So this is something I always keep track of. solar flares. The sun is something we don't really take as seriously as we should. And so it's interesting to look at new research on that. And this article is this. I got like a Google alert actually for it. Super flares once per century, more often than previously thought. Sun-like stars hurl huge amounts of radiation into space. The sun, too, is capable of such outbursts. And so this was a study that looked at other sun-like stars in the solar system. They used the capabilities of the James Webb Telescope, which is like amazing. And there's 56,000 sun-like stars. And so if you look at the behavior, you can't, the problem is we only have ways of monitoring the sun going back since 1980 when they started launching satellites. So you can't really tell what life is like on the sun, for the sun in that short lifespan. But you can look at 56,000 stars that are like the sun and see how often they put out huge solar flares. And it turns out pretty frequently, much more frequently than they thought. So that's every 100 years or so. There's a really huge one. And so that is that story. And good to know, or not. And the Sciku based on that is this. I don't remember it. Let's see. The scene that can't be unseen, being seen. There you go.
Nice wordplay there.
Yeah, I always want to write poems that have no images. And so every once in a while I try to try. And I don't know if that works without images, but maybe. Imageless.
I don't know. I still get to create an image of a blank theater, the scene.
Yeah, it's true. It's just hard to be imageless. But maybe someday there'll be a good poem with no images. Anyway, that is the Sciku for this week. And that is the show for this week. What is your prompt for next week, Katie?
Okay. Write a poem that includes a wish for the new year and features a sound you've never written in a poem before.
Oh.
So obviously I'm not going to actually know. But the point is to have it be an unusual sound, really is what I'm trying to go for. But I didn't want to say a most unexpected sound because it feels like a caricature of my own prompts. So that's how we arrived at that. I figured it would be fun to go ahead and look at our wishes for the new year right before the new year, because the next show is on the 29th.
That's exactly right. So it's a good reminder. There will be no show next week because we are moving to a different studio. And so there will be no show. But next week's guest, in 2 weeks, I should say, 2 weeks from now, the guest will be Rex Wilder. Now, Rex Wilder has a bunch of books with Red Hen Press, my book poetry alma mater or whatever. And his new book is Rare Fuel. He was on the Poet Respond not too long ago and mentioned this book coming out about a mental health break. And that Rare Fuel is the title of Rex Wilder. Really great poet, really interesting person, not the usual poet. So it's going to be fun talking to him. That's Rattlecast number 274. Sunday, December 29th is the date, so 2 weeks from tonight. We're taking next week off, so don't show up, and we don't even have anything scheduled.
Wow, we sound so lazy.
So no show next week, but in 2 weeks, Rex Wilder, Rattlecast number 274, the regular time then, though, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great weekend, and happy holidays to everybody, whatever you celebrate.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Yeah, take care, and goodbye.
Good night.